All right, everyone, Stockfire, I'm back, and I'm just going to do a build, and hopefully I can do it in kind of some quick time. But for me, usually it takes me forever to kind of BS my way through things. But I'm starting off with an empty body. The only thing I've done is I put on the front block to it, and I have my pile of parts here, and I'm just going to be a high flow Inception valve gun with a stock bolt and everything else stock on it. So I don't think there's anything else that's aftermarket besides the body and the bolt. And so first thing, since I got everything out here, is I have my resurrection regulator. I'm going to check the pressure on it. So let's gas it up. I've already preset this, folks, so you can see right where I'm at. So going to focus on there. Let's see if I can get there we go. So whatever that is, my focus is really weird on this camera. I don't know why. I got to figure this out. So I think that's probably 220. Okay, so we're good with that. I'm happy with that. 220. Pull this off to the side. Get out of the way. And get all my parts kind of laid out here. So, all right. Actually, let's start with putting the feed neck on, and you see that I'm using a piece of Lexa here that goes in here. I've inverted this screw. It used to feed in this way. I've pulled it out, fed it in the opposite way against this little piece of plastic. You can use a coin. I think Simon shows a coin on one of his videos. And then you want to tighten down on the screw, and you'll see it will start spreading this open. And you want to spread it open just enough to get it to snap on. Line it up, and we're going to now unscrew this screw completely. All right, pull out that piece of plastic, put the screw back into the opposite side. Tighten it down, and I'm going to line everything up before I tighten it down. You don't need to crank down on this, folks. Just snug. That's all, just snug. And typically, what I know what snug is, I pinch an Allen wrench between my two fingers on the short side. I don't use the long side to get the leverage on it. And you can kind of feel when it's starting to slip out of your hands that you're probably more than tight. Okay, more than you need. All right, so we got that on there. The next thing I'm going to put the lower internals in, and that's going to start off with the high flow valve. I've already lubed the high flow valve up with some lubricant on this O-ring here, and make sure that everything else, this is already kind of oily, make sure all my O-rings are lubed up there. And the high flow valve can only go in one way, the port facing up. And so I'm going to slowly push this in, and kind of a technique that I use, get yourself a bolt, use a bolt to push everything in, and there it goes. It should line up. Now the interesting thing with the high flow valve is the spring's the same spring that's on a resurrection. The valve, which is that pin mechanism with that plastic disc or that plastic sealing surface, is shorter, not as tall as the factory one. So when you put this in there, it should almost line up with almost zero pressure. I don't have to push in it, hold it in there to get the set screw in. It's right at the right length. It's right there. So after that goes in, I have my set screw, and if you can I can get a little there, you can see it's pretty much right where I want it. I have it. This is not red Loctite. It's Vibratite. It's this stuff, folks. VC3 Vibratite. You can buy it on Amazon. Great stuff. It's a vibration and a sealing thing. It's not red Loctite. Don't use red Loctite on paintball guns. I'm going to screw this in until I feel it touch the face of the bolt. I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to a little snug down. It should be below the body. This set screw should not protrude up. It will interfere with your frame. I got the factory spring here, and this is the factory hammer. Let me make sure I got all my parts here. I think that's the. Gotta make sure I have all the right stuff. Actually, hold on a second. I didn't have everything out here if I wanted to. That's not it. That's not it. Give me a second. I thought I had everything here. Okay, where'd it go? That's got to be it. Oh, there it is right there. No, that's not it. This is it. Oh, there we go. Well, I won't screw around with that. I thought I had the factory. I thought this was the factory. Maybe it's the factory one. The factory lug. I misplaced the factory lug. I pulled it out, put it somewhere. I think it's in another hammer that I have in here. Where I put it. I'll find it here in a minute. But anyway, I'm not going to fiddle with that. We're going to use the factory hammer. And maybe that is the one. Let's see. My 1/8 inch. Screw him down in there. I think that is the right one. I think I'm just being goofy. All right, so that's in there. I like to put a little bit of oil, and I'm using, this is very similar to the Tech T oil, or grease, excuse me. Grease it up, and then I do a mix. This is a little bit of, I got it on, it's Liberty oil, it's 100% synthetic lubricant. It's just and I do a mix. I just makes it a little slicker. Okay. Lube that up, drop it in there. It's going to be the slot, open face of the slot facing towards the front of the gun. And I drop that down in there, and the next thing I'm going to do is drop my Allen in the hole. And I'm going to bring that down. I go to where it's approximately, it's approximately about an 1/8 inch from the from being flush with the top of this, 1/8 inch down. That's my good starting point. I'm going to drop in the spring, drop in the back IVG, internal velocity adjuster, and I'm going to screw that in there, and I go in to, I start with flush and I go in, well, let's just do a count on turns. So flush is, so there's one turn from flush and a turn and a half from flush. Gets me about an 1/8 inch drop down. That's where I start, folks. That's just what I do. If you do something different, good for you. That's great. All right, so that's in there. Forgot to take this out of the other body, so let's take the detents out of here. Let's throw the detents on. I got the lower tube section all together. And in one of my other videos, I think that talked about, and I don't think the video's up yet. I don't know if I'm going to post that video yet. I could do a lot of editing on it, but I talk about the detents, and when you take these out, if they're already bent and curved over, reverse them around, pointing the other direction so they can kind of rebend the other way. If you can, that will just kind of extend the life of them a little bit. Put the detents in the body, and like I said, I'm not cranking down on that screw. I'm just putting enough pressure on it that it's going to hold in there. If you want to, on these screws, and you're concerned about things vibrating loose, is you can either use that Vibratite, which to me is a little messy. I hope it's going to focus here. Permatex low strength. I don't know why it doesn't want to focus, guys, but this is the purple low strength, and the key thing is the low strength. It works great for these small screws, keeps them from vibrating out. Great for pneumatic fittings. You can't go wrong with that. It's just good for all that stuff. And then it's, like I said, it's what I use on these fittings. On my, this is, I haven't taken it out since factory. Your macro line fittings works great for that. And it's just something that I recommend. Just works good. It's easy to take apart. I don't like blue, because blue sometimes you got to put a little heat on, or you have it on these smaller screws, you can strip them out. That's good. It's good beer. It can go in there. So some other parts out here. Okay, so I got front block on, body on. Not worried about the regulator. Not worried about the frame yet. That can go off to the side. Probably going to install on the sled and and those parts. So let's see, everything on the sled. So the sled, if you've just taken things apart, you shouldn't have taken this all apart. You may not even have, you may just have pulled your front pneumatics off if you're just doing a body, but if you're doing a complete build, the idea is this hole on the side on these resurrection caulking rods, or pump arms, that hole should be perpendicular with this line right here. I guess that's perpendicular. That's where you want it. You want to make sure that set screw is jammed down on there, and you can put that on there. So I am just going to set it in place this way. And when you have everything apart, one of the things you can do, and actually you can go, hey, how far is this forward? Is this rides like this in there, right? And this determines, this length of how far this is, how wide this is, determines how far the bolt protrudes into the face, and if everything lines up. So a lot of times, let me pull everything out here. You guys don't have bodies like this to mess around with. I have one that's machined open, and so a lot of times you want to be able to say, hey, where is that when this sled is touching the face of this body? It cannot go any further forward no matter how hard I pull on it. Where is the bottom hole of the bolt in relation to the transfer hole through the body? So, and I do a flashlight, and you guys aren't going to see this, but I can push that in there and see where exactly that everything starts and stops. And I know that I have good clearance. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to do that, guys. But it's just something to know that if I want this face of this to be touching the back of that body. So just what works for me to make sure everything is lined up correctly there. All right, so that's on there. So the next thing is we're going to put pneumatics on. So I always start with the three-way. It's the first one I put on. And I'm going to screw this down until it all the way stops. And it all the way stops, it doesn't line up, so I'm going to bring it back to 90. Some people put a little bit of Loctite on here. This purple stuff, the low strength, Permatex low strength, you can use that. Since the Resurrections have these little tiny set screws, you can use those. Either way, I always put a little bit of Loctite, and that's way too much Loctite on that. Let's have a little pool of it there. I put a little bit on those little tiny set screw because I don't want this thing to vibrate out and lose it, and that would really stink. And all I want to do is I just want to lightly turn this down until I'm barely putting in pressure, just to where it's just touching those threads, and it's not mashing into those threads. It's just touching those threads. That's all I want. I just want it to just hold it in place. I don't want to jam it in place. That's a waste. Okay, so that's the first thing I put on, and hey, my RAM already had all the hoses on it, so that's good to go, and it has some Loctite. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to spin this guy on as far as I can, and until it won't go anymore. It's going to go on as far as it can. And it's almost on there. And that's good. And so then I want to screw, oops, sorry, you guys didn't see I was out of frame. I screwed this the shaft on as far as it could go. I didn't put a wrench on it. I don't think I need to. Tighten that down to where these hoses sit about at 12 o'clock's at the top of my finger. That's about 8:30, 9 o'clock's here. About the 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's perfectly fine. So that will get you there. And then I make sure that this goes all the way forward, and I have enough to cock everything back. And it should be fine here. I'm not going to mess with it. That should be all pretty good. I could put these little hoses on, push them in place, put down the little top hats. They don't look like the old top hats, but they function the same way. They just compress that hose so it keeps it tight around that barb. If you notice yourself, you're starting to blow these off. Your Resurrection comes with like another hose. You can buy hose for pretty cheap. Get yourself a foot of it in whatever color you like. Keep it in your toolbox. Cut it with a razor or a pair of diagonal cutters. It's so easy. It just really sucks when you get out to the field and you're like, a hose keeps blowing off because it's just worn off on the end. Sometimes you have enough length, you can just cut it there in the field and then put it back on. And but it gets really annoying that happens. All right, so with that, the next thing on the pneumatics I'm going to put on is the LPR. And like I said, I like to put on purple, low strength, Permatex brand, or any of the low strength stuff that's out there. This is, the Permatex is just purple in color. I'm kind of making a mess of it. And that's probably too much on there. Just probably run my finger around it. It just needs to be in the threads. This Loctite works on a compression, or the lack of oxygen. And I think I can't remember what the chemical name, not the chemical name, what actually the reaction actually happens, but it's under pressure and the lack of oxygen. So what I do is lightly screw it on right until it stops, find out where the hole is, and whoops, lost my wrench. As you heard, it hit the floor. I have this nice wrench I think I got from a bicycle kit that I was working on. Ends up working perfect for these, and I'm going to bring this one all the way around to where I get the maybe a little bit further. I try not to go too tight on this. You just need it tight enough that you can, whoops, you don't need to crank down on these guys. Literally probably hand snug and a little tighter after that would have been fine. If you're trying to get to that position of where you want it. So if you can see, there it is right there, 12 o'clock. That's probably the 11 o'clock or the 10:30. That's a good way to good gauge. And we may go a little bit more because now I get the fitting, clean out the fitting, Give myself a little bit of Permatex on it. Be amazed how fast this stuff dries under pressure. I see you don't need a whole bunch on there. We're going to go in here, and it's nice that I have the hose already on this little fitting here. It gives me something to kind of spin this fitting without having to get my fingers, my big mitts down in there, and it gets me started. And then it's a 1/4 inch for these resurrections. 1/4 inch end wrench works great. Go down to your Sears, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, True Value, I don't know, whatever your tool place is, they should have some micro wrenches there, the small ones, 1/4 inch. And you know, this one's, I like this Craftsman one because they're all polished and there's no sharp edges on them, so I'm not really worried about, you know, damaging the ano on it that much, or damaging it at all. And get that guy in there. Bring down that. I want to look at how tight that bend is. Nope, it's not that tight, so that's right about where I want everything. All right, that's together. So I have front pneumatics on. I have this. I gotta put my 3-way shaft and my 3-way coupler on. I'm gonna put a little bit of you know, on standard autocockers that use the 0.03 non-metric O-rings, I typically don't use grease. I use oil on those. But with these metric ones, they're so tiny. I don't know. I kind of want to give myself a little bit more on there. And like I said, I use essentially a couple products. I use this. It's very similar to Tech T. Actually, it is exactly the same as Tech T. I have this synthetic Liberty oil that I got on eBay. It seems to work really good. It's really lightweight. And then Outlast KC Trouble-Free oil. This is a little bit thicker than that. Actually works really well on that too. I find this to be kind of the best on 3-ways. But anyway, just food for thought. You do what you like. Sure, everything moves back and forth there really nice. Let's see, find all my other parts here. I need a frame. There's a frame. I got a 3-way. Everything's on there, so let's put that on. Hold the body upside down. Take this guy, put it at 90. And what I try to do is I try to put the body at a 90, or the frame to the 90 of the body. Line everything up, line these holes up, and just twist over. When I get it over, I run my thumb through here, and I clamp everything together with my hand. So I'm not worried about this coming off and falling off and bending that shaft. Put the rear screw in first. Make sure I've got the right Allen. Nope. I don't know what size Allen is. I think it's, I don't know, I'm not even going to guess. I snug down the rear one, and like I say, I snug it down, folks. I don't crank it down. On these, you have to pull the trigger back to get that screw in there. I always finger start these. I don't try to crank them on without first starting the threads. Oh, let me get down in there. Okay, get it on there. Finger tight. I mean, it's snug. It's not cranked down tight. All right, so the real trick is, did I get this timing rod? Is my lug the right type? We'll find out here in a minute if I got everything right. Actually, I always put a little lube on this. Every time I take it up and put it on, it just helps that O-ring, that static O-ring. The O-ring doesn't move until you pull this in and out. And if your macro line is cut sharp on the edges, every time you put it in, it has potential to grab that O-ring and slice off a little bit of it. And eventually you'll be trying to replace that O-ring there, which is a real pain in the butt, and you end up throwing this thing out, which is usually perfectly fine except the O-ring. And you go down and you buy $5 another one. That was a waste for essentially a dirt cheap O-ring. So, you know, a lot of times when I cut these macro lines, I get like a lighter, um, and after I slice it, I just get a lighter, and I just kind of lightly, I don't want to say burn the end, I just melt a little bit to the end to just take that 90-degree, that sharp edge, the sharp edge that's on here, and I just try to knock that off with the lighter and then run it through my fingers. You can run a piece of sandpaper like that and just knock that sharp edge in. That will sometimes help you preserve that if you're pulling those off and on. So anyway, let's see, let's put a barrel on it so it's not so loud. I do like, when I'm tuning, always tune with the barrel on. Reason I do that is because it changes how the gun shoots. Changes how the air goes down the barrel. That's just my thing. You can do whatever you want on that. I don't know if this is going to leak or not. Let's see, the LPR I think was pretty much set. Let's see, you guys just saw me build this. I don't think it's perfect, but it never is every first time, right? I'm going to cock it to start off with because who knows if it's going to leak. Okay, my three-way's leaking out of the front or the back, I don't know. It's leaking somewhere. I got to figure out where it's leaking. Okay, so I pull it back. I think it's out of that side, so let me get my, is this the guy using there? Like I said, I don't know where it's leaking from. So let's turn it in. It's blowing air on my face, so I don't know where that's coming from. Turned it out. So I got a leak somewhere else. I don't know where it's leaking. It feels like one of these hoses is leaking. Oh. I don't think it's the three-way. Let me degas this. I think it's this hose right here is going to leak. So the three-way may have been just right on there. Let me see here. I've got a little leak here. Look, I'll pull this collar up. So I may have, so a down and dirty way to do this. So I'm going to pinch this end here. Whoops. I'll cock it. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to pinch the end with my pliers and see if it's leaking anywhere else. Okay. So what I think's happening is that somewhere this guy is leaking here, and I don't know if it's a crack somewhere wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the dirty cut. Use a pair of cutters that I use for wires. I'm going to trim off a little bit of that, and I'm going to start fresh. Put that on there, put that guy around there, caulk everything. Okay. Oh, maybe it's leaking somewhere else. Oh. Alright, I think I found out which one it is. Taking the burr off. So, it's not the three-way itself leaking, it's one of the pneumatic hoses. Now, I've yanked these off about 15 billion times, so I may have finally got it screwed up. And there's a bumblebee that's come in and decided to be my friend. Oh, that's super. Oh, another thing I forgot, guys. You forgot to tell me. No, you can't tell me. Hey, what about that other little set screw? So let me put that one in. That's just the set screw for the RAM. As I lose it. Now there's a little bit of, I got a little bit of Loctite right here that's still, there we go. Purple Loctite, Permatex Purple Low Strength. Make sure that's all on there. Snug it where it's just snug. Alright, let me I don't know where it's leaking. I can feel it. I think I just need to replace a hose completely. So let me get a piece of hose, folks, right here. Hey, look at it's in my kit. let's just replace this hose completely. I think this hose right here is bad. So I'm going to replace this upper hose, or the rear ram hose. Oh, it's on there tight. Okay, there's that one. Take out those two little collars. Let me look at this guy. I think he's ripped here on the side, tell you the truth. Oh yeah, I have a hole. So that's where the leak was. It wasn't anything with my timing. So let's just kind of measure that out right about there. Get a razor blade. All right. Let's put this all down there. Okay, that's close enough for government work. Right about there. I think we're pretty close. Save that. Did I get it? Do I need to take off? Oop, need to take off a little bit more. Not the end of the world, folks. Take off another. All right. So there we go. Let's put these little guys on here. So a lot of times people go, hey, look at, sometimes this stuff is so hard to get on, you know, how do you put this on? And some people say, oh, heat it with a lighter. No, don't do that. Chew on it in your teeth. Just put it on there and chew on it. Your saliva will eventually evaporate. It's no oil. You try and just kind of soften it up, warm it up, soften it up. But for the most part, it should go on. This hose is pretty good hose. Should go on there. That one went on fine there. Then I like using a pair of needle nose pliers, and it helps me kind of guide that other one on. And that's probably what the habit is. They probably use a set of needle nose and it came off. So hey, we did a repair during the build. And that could happen. When you pull this hoses off, you could rip one and not even know it. Let's cock it. Hey, no leak. Uh-oh. Well, that's because I'm out of air. Let me go fill this tank up real quick, my little micro test tank. And let's see if we can get it going. So hold on. All right, coming back. Down and dirty building. Cock it. Okay, let's look at my, man. You know, I don't claim to be good at anything, and I'm definitely not good at this, but let's see. I'm trying to see where that thing fires. Okay, so I'm about not halfway back. Trying to bring that up so you could see it. And so it's going to be conservative on that end. I think that's what it is. So the higher the lug is in this direction, the quicker the sear, when you pull it back, is going to release. Okay, and then fire the ball down. And so, and then as you travel back, it activates the three-way. And so to be really conservative timing is that when it fires to that dwell, that space between firing and then recocking, the farther those 2 points apart is conservative. The closer you bring it up is less conservative, and you have the chance for having blowback up into the breech. But you sacrifice one thing for another. Is sometimes you get a lighter trigger pull, you get a faster trigger, a shorter trigger. That's what you may gain. I don't feel any blowback up in here. So what are some of the other tuning things I can do to this? Your stock resurrection. If you haven't taken the lug out and looked at the quality of the polish on it, do so. I don't have one to show you. It's a square lug. It's not a tapered lug, which you would see like on a And why that doesn't want to focus. There we go. This is a taper lug like you see on standard autocockers. That one's kind of nasty looking. Then there's different lugs, like there's rounded ones that are rounded over. Let me see if I can find a couple. I think I got some in here. I usually have a pile of lugs around here somewhere. Okay, here they are. Let's see. So here's some different lugs. We have this. Some are pretty nasty. Some are square. Let's find a rounded one. I don't have a rounded one. Okay, so here's some different lugs out there. Oh wait, I thought that was a... Here's a couple different ones. Let's bring this up into here. Square, and that's pretty much what the Resurrection has on it. This is a big taper. And I don't necessarily like the big tapers. There you go, and there's your sear, right? And then your lug sits on there like that. Okay, so with a taper like this, there's more surface area contact. When it's at 90 like this, there's less surface area. It's just connecting on this little edge here, and there's less surface area contact. The 90s, if they're hardened, and this isn't hardened, you can see it start to wear on the back of this. The tapers, if everything's polished nice, this has you have a better chance of, I don't know. There's all these theories. To me, there's greater friction here, to a certain degree. Personally, I like it where it's a 90 that's been just tapered off a little bit. I mean, you're just taking that sharp edge off. And really kind of rounding over it with sandpaper. Just a very slight, still looks like a 90. It's not. That's the best that I've for me. And then some people like, I think Bell Cells at one time did the rounded over ones. A&S, the quick fire frames, had ones that if they went up like this and they tapered in like that and they tapered out like that. If I had a pen, I could draw it for you, which I don't. And so, you know, an alright idea, but I thought it was kind of a waste because it's still the contact point on that sear and that lug was the same little spot on a square one. So a square one is, to me, is fine. So all in all, it's all back together. Works good. And I'm going to go shoot it, see how it shoots with a Chrono.